It's great to be here and wonderful to see so many people. Is it okay if we take some screenshots with everybody? It's so cool.
Absolutely.
And this has been an incredible opportunity for me to get to know Tori and Jamie and this wonderful organization that you have all contributed so much to. And we're absolutely thrilled to welcome you to this, what I feel is a really important project for the time we're living in. And I thought I'd just tell you how the project started and where how it evolved into what it is today. Um, I think like most musicians, particularly conductors, I was trying to find a way to celebrate. And of course, I thought 2020 would be extremely well known for being the anniversary of Beethoven. I mean, little did I know that poor Beethoven would get short shrift in 2020. But I was trying, like I think, like all of us, to find a way to celebrate Beethoven, because there's something about Beethoven that is indescribable, and he resonates with every single human being on some level. And for me, the message of the composer is critical. That's what the role of the conductor is, to be the messenger for the composer. So I like to get very, very close to the message. And throughout Beethoven's life, and you look at all of his works, really, there's this underlying message of overcoming adversity, but also overcoming adversity through the power of unity and humanity. Of course, the stories and the recountings talk about him being quite a crabby guy and pretty unpleasant to be around. But I think the reality is that he was someone who craved human interaction and really longed for those kinds of connections. But due to so many circumstances, not the least of which was losing his hearing, he became extraordinarily isolated over his lifetime and very, very frustrated. And, in thinking about him, not just as a composer, but as a philosopher for his time and for our time, I had the idea to try to rethink the Ninth Symphony. Um, and, musically, of course, not to change any notes of the piece, but musically to add interstitial music, music between the movements and before the piece, to try to convey the narrative of the piece. Friends of mine who are not musicians, they would always say, "Oh yeah, I like the Ninth Symphony. I really enjoy when the people start singing." And they would sort of endure the first three movements. And I wanted to create a listening experience and concert experience where the journey of the piece came to life and was super, super clear. And I wanted that to be able to change depending on the location, depending on the listeners, depending on the cultural experience. So, in talking with Carnegie Hall, we decided to look at reimagining the texts, not translating them, but taking the themes of unity, humanity, joy, of course, and I think connection, tolerance, all of these themes, and re reimagine a text for the 21st century, because the Schiller was extremely relevant in the time it was written. For Beethoven, this was an avant-garde text about freedom, about you know about unity, about not just the individual but the collective. These were all brand new ideas. So we I spoke with orchestras around the world, and we had planned to perform it on 6 continents with 9 different texts and uh, and music woven in throughout. And of course, then COVID happened, and we were able only to launch the project in Sao Paulo, where you can, I think we might have a link that we can share with everyone at some point. Jessica may know of that performance. The issue for Brazilians is the issue of slavery. That's something that has impacted their society, hugely, of course, also in the United States. But we began the piece with the choir coming into a darkened hall, singing what would have been a slave song, quote unquote, of the time, but that every Brazilian knows and is extremely emotional and very evocative. And so that set the stage for our performance there. And I'm pleased to say that many of the performances have been redated and rescheduled. South Africa, we have a text in Zulu being created. New Zealand, Maori text by a poet there. We're doing it in Beijing. That's just a translation that, you have to get so many government approvals that we just went straight with a translation. We'll be doing it also in Vienna in April, in Baltimore. The text in Baltimore was done by a rap artist here. And then, of course, we have this fabulous culmination that we were going to do at Carnegie Hall with this beautiful text by Tracy K Smith, who will join us. And fortunately, YouTube and Google came on board to say, we think this project is a project for our time and is so relevant and really resonates now that we want to be a part of it and push it out in some kind of digital format. And so that's where you come in. I recorded the orchestra parts in Vienna, and members of my my new venture, which is called Go, the Global Orchestra, will also join in to the orchestra, and this will be the pad for all of you to contribute your beautiful singing to. So that's where we are. That's where the project is. And I'm hoping that, those of you around the world will look out for the project and maybe even join me when we are able to perform it live.
So are there plans to go back to the original format of the Global Ode to Joy?
Say that again, Tori.
Are there plans to go back to the original format of the Global Ode to Joy?
Well, the idea of doing it on the 6 continents and having it live is still in the planning, but it's been redated for 21, 22 in most places. So
right.
That's exciting. But this is now going to be the focal point and the real launch of the project.
Which is so exciting, and we're delighted to be involved. And I tell you what, when the concerts actually happen in 2021, 22, let's see if we can get some of our members in every single audience around the world.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Wouldn't that be great?
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
We can sort of, the idea is also really to involve the entire world in some way, to speak about what brings them joy. It's so interesting because I've thought a lot about joy and done a lot of research on joy, and it's really considered to be, if not one of the most powerful human emotions, because it galvanizes us, it motivates us, it enables us, and it's a connecting emotion. Joy is something that one shares.
Yeah, absolutely. So to widen our lens out slightly to the work as a whole, could you maybe let us into a little bit of your process and how you prepare and interpret the work as a conductor? I mean, you must have a sort of deepening relation to it as you revisit it every time you conduct it.
Well, I mean, again, it's this idea of a journey that I want the listener and of course the musicians to feel that when the piece begins with this open fifth, and la 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 ba-bum, ba-bum, that it's Beethoven chooses this because he's setting the stage for the concept of possibility. He's not predicting anything. It's open now. And what kind of possibility, what kind of world do we want? What kind of citizens do we want to be? I mean, this is what I'm feeling as this opens in this sotto voce very mysterioso. And within just a few measures, it arrives at this unison sort of, we are here, ba-bam, 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 ba-bam. So to me, this is the philosophy, this is the storyline right away. What from this idea of nothingness can come great strength. And to me, that's really sets the stage of the first movement, which leads us to this scherzo, which also begins with this powerful unison, bumpana, 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 bumpana. But what I find so fascinating about this movement is Beethoven's use of silence. I think that silence is really critical, especially to Beethoven. And it must have been shocking to hear this.
Oh, Marin, we've just lost you.
No, somehow I got muted. Am I back?
Got you back. Tell you what, Marin, I'm going to co-host you so that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, it was you, Jamie, huh?
I'm so sorry.
Didn't like what I said, okay?
There we are. You should be co-host now. Co-host.
And then, so for example, I want to share also that my idea was to have the piece played without any pauses. So from the end of the first movement, to make a transition, bum, 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 somehow a percussive transition in unison to this bumpana, 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 bumpana. And from there, Beethoven says at the end of this movement, you think, oh, we're going to go around this corner yet one more time. And then he just says, no, never mind. I've had enough of that. Finished. And I think that's so brilliant. He tries to lull us into the idea that we know what's coming. And then he says, no, never mind. Let's get on to something else. And we go to this most stunning slow movement, which begins with these close neighbors, da, da, dee, da, dee, da, in the bassoons. I think it's the only piece in history that begins with a second bassoon solo, and they always look like super nervous, like as though they're going to throw up. Just to share that with you, and they usually do very well. So this movement to me is really about introspection, and it represents for me Beethoven's spiritual side, and particularly his relationship with the natural world, which for Beethoven was, I think it was right up there with any kind of deity that he believed in. And it's so prayerful, and it's so thoughtful and pensive, and um, and in so many ways, I think it has a beautiful sense of optimism. And then, of course, we are interrupted by this dissonance of the finale. That's great. I think people hearing this for the first time, really, they must have lost their minds. What has Beethoven, what overtook him to start the finale of this in this way? And when you look at the text, the Schiller text, Beethoven added only a couple of lines of his own making. And of course, he added the first lines, which say, no more these sounds. For me, it's really amplifies how I feel about the world we live in. We have to stop with all of this arguing. No more this tone. So I feel it's a line for today in many ways. No more of this. And then, of course, we get this incredible recitativo, but it's a recitativo played by the instrumentalists, setting up this incredible tune, which is possibly the most simple tune ever written. I mean, the intervallic reach is very small. it's extremely repetitive, and yet it's iconic. I mean, every child knows this tune. And when we hear the tune, we know it automatically. Do you know, I think it would have been a hit song if it had been released as a single in his day. And so, of course, this finale is picking up on all of these themes: the sense of possibility, the sense of dread, the sense of power, the sense of silence, the sense of questioning. And by adding the human voice, I think he really gets across the idea that is so important to him, that we are one, we are human, we are united. And without adding the human voice, I'm not sure we would have felt this kind of power. And to me, there is almost no greater joy than performing this piece with, a full choir, a full orchestra, a full hall. There is something just magical about it. And there is a reason why this is the most performed classical piece in the history of music. And, there's nothing like it. And to imagine that this was composed by someone who could not hear is formidable for me. And in this process of thinking so much about Beethoven, I realized that it was so appropriate in a way that 2020 would be his 250th anniversary, because he is a human being that represents struggle, embodies struggle, and embodies the idea that there is still hope always. And we need to have an optimistic view of the future. And as someone, Beethoven, who even contemplated suicide early on when he realized he was going to lose his hearing and it was going to be a devastatingly gradual process. But he realized that he had something to give, and he couldn't deny everyone else that. And so for me, this is a piece, it's a piece for our time, and specifically this time we're living in. And otherwise, I feel I wouldn't have met all of you. It's almost like the piece itself becomes the journey. And, I'm extremely grateful to Beethoven for having written the piece.
Thank you. And you said earlier that it was an avant-garde text, and actually it was quite an avant-garde idea to have a chorus at the end of a symphony.
Well, actually, the critics thought he was mad. They said it was really a great piece until the people started singing. The opposite of what we think today, of course. Yeah, it was mad.
But it's the perfect vehicle for a text. I'd love to know how it changes your approach to how you conduct, how your gesture changes when you're working with the orchestra compared to when the choir come in at the end, and how you welcome them into the process of music making.
Yeah, I love working with choirs. I find that there's an immediacy and a responsiveness that is so beautiful, and that also galvanizes the musicians and the orchestra. When the choir has been sitting there listening to the musicians, and then suddenly, stands, I don't know, it's absolutely thrilling. And I probably focus too much on the choir. The musicians.
You're very welcome
say
to.
that.
The singers as well, isn't it?
Well, it's so much fun, yeah.
Brilliant. And we've got a brand new text to sing. It's an amazing new text, and it's perfect vehicle for our time. And I'm delighted to say that we're joined here in the Zoom by Tracy K Smith. Tracy, I'm going to ask you to unmute because we've got a magic mute button on today. Hi, Tracy. Nice to meet you.
Hi, good morning. It's great to meet you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And I understand that Tracy and Marin, this is going to be the first time you've been in the Zoom together.
Great to meet you, Tracy.
Likewise. Such an honor.
Thank you so much for being part of this project.
I'm delighted.
It sort of changed from day one, but here we are with all of these marvelous people joining us and being part of it.
Thanks. Tracy, we've had some rehearsals already. The singers are recording throughout this week, and we'd love to hear about the text from your perspective. If you would take a few minutes to tell us about it, please.
Oh, sure. Well, I loved the challenge of revisiting this beautiful text and trying to think of what I could hear within it that might feel new and newly useful, which is how I like to think of some of the things that poems or songs can offer us, newly useful ways of looking at ourselves and one another. So I was working on this poem during, within the last, 4 years, and feeling aware of a sense of division, anxiety, uncertainty, all of those feelings that in some ways are, an inevitable part of the 21st century, but we also know a great deal of the strife that we live with is brought about by us, our action and our inaction. And so I wanted to think about what I could hear within Ode to Joy that could speak to that could speak to, a world that feels differently sacred and abundantly profane, and also alive with capacities that we forget about sometimes because we're distracted or preoccupied with our own occupations. And I got excited. I started to feel some of my own questions and some of the images that feel current and local to me, finding room for them within this text. And then I started to think, okay, joy it's not just this balm. It's not just this thing that comes down from above. It's something that we have to work to build, protect, recognize. I also think that sometimes in this world, joy is it's a complex feeling, and it's built of beauty, and it's also something that brings a little bit of pain with it. And I think that's part of the power of it. It's painful to understand that the happiness we feel is sometimes built upon other things that are not lovely. It's painful to understand that the happiness we might feel and share is momentary. And all of those contradictions, I hope, peek out from different moments within the song as I've translated it. I also liked the opportunity to say, okay, it's not just the classical God of Christianity that I want to speak to. I want to speak to what feels holy in this world. And sometimes that's the earth. Sometimes that's something mysterious, like the workings of science. And so some of those images come in, and I hope they exert a kind of holy charge within the poem.
And Marin, this sort of chimes in with what you were saying about Beethoven's different sort of sources of godliness, whether it be nature or actual God, and also some of these tensions that Tracy is talking about. They're very much apparent within the symphony, aren't they?
Oh yes, I mean, I think that Tracy really has captured. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a more beautiful text, but also a more relevant text. She's able to take the same themes that were relevant at the time of the Schiller and bring them into the focus for the 21st century. And that's what I was so hoping for. So, brava.
Now, this is a question for both of you together. What is going to make a successful performance? I suppose my question really is, how can we help? What's going to make a successful performance of this text with this music for a choir? What do we need to be thinking about?
But I think it would be amazing, Tracy, if you would just read for everyone here that portion that they're going to sing. Don't you think, Tori?
That would be amazing. Shall we share it on the screen so people can read along?
That would be great. Would that be okay, Tracy, for you?
Absolutely, and that's great.
Because we want to get the inflection and the intention behind the words that you want.
Okay. Am I sharing, or I'm waiting for you to share?
Am I screen sharing, Jamie?
I've got it. There we are.
Okay. Okay.
And which section will they be singing, then here we are. Yep.
Okay.
Oh.
Joy, bright God spark, born of ever, daughter of fresh paradise, where you walked once, now walk rancor, greed, suspicion, anger, fright, joy, the breeze off all that's holy, pure with terror, wild as flame. Make us brothers, give us comfort, bid us past such fear and hate.
That's wonderful, thank you. We've actually had a question in specifically about the phrase "pure with terror." It seems to be such a conflicting phrase. It's difficult to break apart. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that line in particular?
Yeah, well, that's an instance of the kind of contradiction or complexity that I'd like to believe that the notion of joy holds. And so I think of terror in that, not as the earthbound terror, things we wage upon one another as threat or intimidation, but awe. Imagine the largeness of the universe, or a star. If you could behold it up close, you would be filled with a beautiful fright. That's what I'm thinking about. Something that is so large and pure and purposeful, and something that doesn't need us, but that we're sort of beholden to. That's the terror that I'm hoping to conjure in that.
It reminds me a little bit of the symphony. It's got a sort of vastness to it, which is awesome and awful to behold. And did you spend a lot of time with the Schiller text when you were bringing your new text to life? I've noticed particularly the word "Godspark" is almost a direct translation. Am I right?
Well, I worked from an intermediary translation, so that probably is a word that was given to me from that, and that felt so real. But I don't remember, because I don't have both texts in front of me. But I liked the feeling that words combined with one another, as I think often happens in German, could bring a new charge of what the proximity of contradictory or just unlikely things. So I hope that's present there. I hope I wrote that word, but I have a feeling I probably borrowed that word.
And Marin, does it change how you conduct the work to have brand new text to deal with, and so many different texts in the original project?
I have to say that I've only had the experience of doing the text in Portuguese in Sao Paulo. And I was music director there for 8 years, so I spoke relatively decent Portuguese. And there's a completely different flow to a different language. There's a color to it. Portuguese is it's a very liquid language. English is a harsher language, but it not nearly as harsh as German. So each language has a different feel to it. And my experience with the Portuguese was quite profound, in that I don't think it was from my perspective, but the way the audience behind me reacted to hearing this great piece with words in their native language was formidable. I mean, it was spectacular. They owned it immediately. And I feel that when people hear Tracy's words, they will be able to own it in a way that we can't automatically access the German, particularly the German from before 1800, which has a different kind of message for us.
Yeah.
I don't know that it changes the way I conduct it, but I think it changes. It probably changes the color and the feel, and that will change and influence how I conduct.
Yes, absolutely. And this was a question that was originally put forward by Joanna. Joanna, are you actually in the room? I think that I've got the correct Joanna. Has that answered your question, or was there anything else that you wanted to say? See if she's here.
How can you find anyone? There's so many people.
Oh,
here.
I've got a magic search button. I think maybe Joanna is here, but is just listening. So Joanna, I hope that answered your question. So we're going to go off now, and we're going to be recording our parts. Is there anything from a musical perspective, Marin, that you would like us to be thinking about when we're recording? I know that's an enormous, vast question, but if there's anything particular that springs to mind.
Maybe I should share with Tracy a little bit, since we haven't spoken about the singing in this piece, that this is a fiendishly, notoriously difficult piece to sing. So I'm very aware of that, and I'm sensitive to it. The range is quite high. It's pretty, it's not a long piece for the choir, but it's a strenuous piece for the choir. So the trick is to make it, like everything in life, is to make it sound easy and without too much struggle. But just so you know, it's sort of one of those pieces that everybody can't wait to sing and dread singing. Am I putting it correctly, Tori?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's an unrelenting sing, but isn't that so interesting?
Pure terror.
Yeah, exactly. Pure with terror. We've got another one of those brilliant tensions. You love it and you dread it at the same time. I think that sums it up perfectly. Great. Oh, great. There we go. So am I still there?
Yep, you're there.
Great. Okay.
You're back.
Yes. So I suppose what I'm taking from that is we've been doing a lot of breath work, a lot of trying to make it sound easy by keeping it on the breath, and making sure that you're thinking of the legato. Actually, I would say a lovely legato line through it, so that your breath is helping to carry you through those strenuous phrases.
Could I say one more thing, Tori, about it? That I think, especially with the challenges of making it come together from your individual location. For me, I know this is impossible, but I wonder if you can feel each other breathing, if you can feel each other across the world, and really have that as part of it, and don't judge yourself so much. It's much more important to connect and feel everyone else. And I believe that we can do that even virtually.
I completely agree with you. You've heard it here directly from Marin Alsop. Don't judge yourself too much. That's not the joy, the nub of joy that we're trying to communicate here. It's about self-expression and letting go.
It's not about perfection. I mean, perfection is fine, but I find perfection way overrated. And I think when we as artists are striving for perfection, we lose track of what the essence is. So really try to feel each other and feel Beethoven right there with you. I think he would have been absolutely thrilled particularly with Tracy's beautiful text. And I think he would have said, yeah, let's go for this.
Well, I love what you described, Marin, as just a great, beautiful definition of how community can be built and felt in any mode. It seems like obviously wonderful advice for singers, but to think about the breath of others, the presence of others, the labor is something that you're receiving, and the consciousness of self and ego is something that should be backgrounded a little bit. I love that. And we live so much of our lives in this format. We see ourselves right there, but of course the bigger and better and more beautiful thing is to kind of try and draw those other people into a sense of presence with you. I love that. I love how you said that.
Great. So interesting to think how we're living through a period of isolation now, and actually just a bit of food for thought, stay-at-home choir, is that Beethoven obviously lost his hearing. He wasn't able to hear the music that was surrounding him, and we're in the same boat. I'm just going to refer quickly to what you said, Marin, about trying to feel the rest of the choir around you and to breathe with them. Can you give me a wave if you've done any really big choral singing before? You've sung a symphonic work, you've sung with a big group of people. Scroll through. Look how many other people you've had that experience. Can you remember what it felt like? That's the extra little bit of creativity that you need to bring to recording virtually. You need to imagine, just like Beethoven would have done, the sound world that you are a part of. And when you breathe, you know what it feels like to breathe with the choir, but you have to use that extra bit of musical imagination in order to bring that into the front of the sound. Imagine everybody in this suit now standing alongside you when you sing.
And try, now that you've had this great opportunity to hear Tracy read her beautiful text, I think try to I just have the feeling about the complexity of joy. I think that's so important what you said, Tracy, about that joy. It's not a Hallmark card. Here's, have joy, happy holidays, whatever you say. But it's actually, when you look back to the history of the word itself, joy, you look back to Sanskrit, it doesn't just mean joy, it means life. It has all these other connotations and meanings, and it really is something we need now. We need to share joy. We need to stop being divisive and join together and create a better future and take care of each other. This is my view anyway. Create community, and that's what we're doing.
That's amazing. Thank you. Now we're going to open up the chat at this point, and we're going to, if it's okay with both of you, move on to a few questions.
Sure.
So, Moya or Rachel, if you would open up the chat. If you have a question, please do post it in the chat, and we'll maybe we can all pick a few out that strike us. But just to kick us off, I wanted to go to a question from. I'm spoiled for choice. I'm going to go to a question from Haley, who's in China. Haley, are you around? I'm going to search her in the chat. This is where we might.
Yes. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I am. You were asking a little about experiences of being virtual. It seems to chime in with what we've just said about trying to recreate live music making in a digital format. Hi, Haley.
Hello. So yeah, I mean I wrote the question yesterday, so I think, but it was just saying about is it what are some of the challenges to making it work correctly, because a lot of us are dealing with this right now, and to get the full effect it was along those lines. Perhaps Tori has the exact words that I said.
Let me just bring up your question, Haley. You were asking about is this the first experience you've had, Marin, of trying to bring something together virtually?
It's not. I mean, of course, in these COVID times, everybody's on the virtual bandwagon. So, we've tried to do things. I think we have an opportunity here to do something different. I think we can create something that is the true sum of all the parts, so that everyone's contribution creates something of greater value by adding it to this. I would say that, again, I'm going to stress that it's more important that you breathe and feel the music than it is that you're absolutely, spot perfect in this way or that way. Now, I'm not saying that I want to hear a lot of imperfections either, of course, but it's about the whole. And I think since we're working now with these wonderful people at YouTube and Google, they're going to help. And now that Tori and Jamie are on board, they're going to help us really try to create something, I think, that is different from the usual just singing heads or boxes or whatever we've seen before.
Yeah, and it's so difficult to get past the technical challenges of it, and to reconnect with the sort of musical integrity that you would have naturally when you're all in the room together. Have you got any tips for us on how we might be able to get over that and sort of forget in a way that we are actually all separate?
Yeah, gosh, I don't know. What do you do? I mean, maybe you want to bring your family members into the room as you sing, but that might be terrifying too. I don't know. I can't imagine, when my son, I swore that I would never do to my children what my parents did to me, but my son still has one more year to be forced to play the violin. And the last thing he would want is anybody in the room while he played. So I don't want to create more trauma outside of my family. But I really think in some ways, you might want to have company in the process. And there's nothing wrong with that.
It's a human thing to give joy and share joy. In fact, what you've just said, Marin, has just reminded me of a question that we had from Sue Ellen in the United States. She was talking about keeping the youth involved in classical music. Sue Ellen, are you here to ask your question, or shall I be your proxy?
I'm here, but you could better read what I wrote. Thank you.
Okay. So Sue Ellen was saying, how important is it to inspire young people with old music? I mean, we've already been talking about how Beethoven is relevant for today.
It's a little, for me, it's a great question. And it's also a broader question of why is it important to know history? Why is it important to know great literature of the past, the classics? Because they connect us to our heritage as human beings. They connect us to the greatness in humanity, in my opinion. And they give us hope that humanity will endure. And through art, I think, make important contributions to the future. So to me, this is the best of both worlds. It connects us immediately to our past, and yet it brings it into today with the text. It's sometimes hard to build those bridges for young people. Why is a Beethoven symphony relevant? But I think it's really important that we try to give everyone access. This is another, I'm a huge believer in equal access for every single human being. And when I see kids, I have a program here in Baltimore called Orchids, or Orchestra Kids. And we started with 30 kids in West Baltimore, and we have 2,000 kids playing musical instruments now. It's amazing. And we did a fantastic mashup of Ode to Joy and The Conqueror, a pop tune. And I think the kids related equally to both genres, and that was so beautiful. And I see that every child owns music. Every child owns words. Every child owns visuals, graphics, drawings, paintings. And we should not deny everyone access.
Absolutely. And speaking of owning words, Tracy, do you find that you find the same kind of openness and willingness to experiment among the young people that you work with?
I do, yeah. I know that I teach creative writing at Princeton, and we begin with the contemporary because this is the lexicon that we live and think in. But I agree that it is very important to realize that texts that are classics are so because they speak to these enduring dilemmas that come with being human: love, death, war, isolation, injustice. These are the same questions that run through our own lives. And to inhabit a different vocabulary allows your own sense of experience to grow a little bit. It gives you recourse to other images, other constructions within which to place your own feelings. And then the other thing I think that's really important is it allows for a certain kind of transference so that I can say, oh, I live in my own time with the same mythic stakes that these figures from history, from literary history also exhibit. And that's important. I mean, if we're talking about access, we need access to that awareness, because I think there's so much in the world that tells so many of us that our stories are small and niche and marginal. And, that's not true.
It's just such a lovely way to think about it. Thank you so much. Let's see. Do keep posting your questions in the chat, and don't forget that you can watch this session back. I can just see some people are saying that it's been so helpful to hear you read the text, Tracy, and thank you so much for that. This session is going to be recorded, so you can watch it on catch up, which means that if you want to pause and rewind Tracy and listen to her read it again.
But couldn't we ask her to read it again now?
I would love to, but I was
Would you, Tracy? Is that too cheeky of me?
Not at all. Would you like to
shall we get the text up on screen again?
Yeah.
To do that. Thank you. That's really
and
helpful.
highlight the portion. Yeah.
Thank you.
And the next verse too.
Oh, the next verse
well.
too.
We're not actually singing that verse, David. So
Oh, sorry.
no worries.
Oh,
Joy, bright God spark, born of ever, daughter of fresh paradise. Oh, I got an ad on the screen. Can you scroll down?
Oh, the times we live in.
I'm going to start over. Joy, bright God spark, born of ever, daughter of fresh paradise, where you walked once, now walk rancor, greed, suspicion, anger, fright. Joy, the breeze off all that's holy, pure with terror, wild as flame. Make us brothers, give us comfort, bid us past such fear and hate.
Thank you. What I think is just so interesting about the way you read that, Tracy, is where you're choosing to put the word stresses, and the fact that there are many words within this. Every single word is loaded with meaning, and we're really hearing that in the way you're speaking it. It's a very deliberate movement through the text. Is there some way that we can take this and apply it to the melody when we're singing, to try and get the same kind of weight to the text as we hear when Tracy reads it?
I think just hearing which words are in the hierarchy she stresses and are important is going to help you immensely. Mm-hmm. And I think the way that it flows with the actual music is almost parallel. So I don't think it's going to be any issue for you, but do listen back to her recitation so that you can feel where those emphases are.
Yeah, we will do. Thank you. And just to wrap up the session today, if you do have any last questions, please do post them in the chat. Final words of wisdom. What are the three most important things that we should be focusing on when we're singing this? Especially when with regards to the fact that we're all doing it on our own at home.
Oh gosh, Tracy, what do you think about the text? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I think of this poem as a prayer or a wish. Sometimes poems feel also like they have the power, because of how language works, to be like a spell. So I would like to imagine that these words are living things that you're pushing out, or if you want, calling in to do their work. That's, I think, part of the emphasis of those. I hear the emphasis of like a lot of the initial consonants in those words that we were talking about. Imagine that is making something happen.
Yeah,
that's great.
Sorry, Marin, did I cut you off?
Oh, it's okay. I was just going to jump in my usual way. I think from my perspective, it's more important to have the sense of community. That should be the driving factor, that we together are creating a community that will touch other people. It's don't obsess about, it's so hard, this thing. I know how hard it is, don't be, as I said earlier, don't be too hard on yourself, but don't become distracted, I think, by trying to push yourself. I want you to push yourselves, of course, but remember that it's about this idea of creating a new community for the future.
Yeah. And to finish off the session, Marin, could you let us know what is the final result for this? I mean, we've given people the information that it's going to be shared on YouTube, but what's the culmination of this Global Ode to Joy project? What can we look forward to?
Well, I think the actual video itself is going to be spectacular, but it's all the calls that we've put out, I think, for people to share what brings them joy, and the responses that we've had. And I think, I suppose it's a little too ambitious to expect to change the world, but I figure, why not try, huh? And I feel that each of you has that same capacity. Each of us has that capacity, and we just can't not try, because I think that's the worst crime of all, is when you stop trying, and just make this be part of your aspirations as citizens of the world. That's what we are here. So, what the end result will be is, I hope it'll be a worldwide celebration of joy. So,
and a celebration that is made up of thousands and thousands of individual contributions from all over the world. So that brings our session to the conclusion for today. To just a little bit of housekeeping, you've been encouraged to share videos of moments of joy. Now, this is separate to the choir videos that we are recording to be part of the musical contribution in the main Global Ode to Joy video. And Marin, was there anything you wanted to say about that?
Oh, but it can be anything, anything that brings you joy, whether it's your cat or your, family, or your, a book you're reading. You could read us it can be anything. And I think that's the greatness of joy. It's everywhere. It can be everywhere. And we just want you to share something with us if you have time, and you don't have to either. It's no pressure, but the more we have, I think the more joyful we will be.
I couldn't agree more. All the information for how you do that is on the instructions page of the website, which is www.stayathomechoir.com. And you only have to upload it to your own social media, because through the magic of hashtags, if you use hashtag Global Ode to Joy, it will link everything together, and we will all join into this big cloud of joy that we're hoping to spread across the world.
And Jessica's giving us some instructions. What is she saying? How long should it be? 30 seconds? What was it? Or are those in the instructions?
Everything's up
okay.
on the instructions page of the website. So do go and check it out. But it's very like the hashtag Scenes of Sanctuary. Yes, it's very similar to what we did for the Armed Man, when we shared scenes of sanctuary, places that made us feel safe and comfortable. So it's a similar concept, and very easy to do. And so upload those to YouTube or your social media. Tracy and Marin, thank you so much for joining us. It's been enlightening and uplifting to hear you both talking about the text and about the wonderful symphony that we're working on. And we hope that you'll enjoy the finished choir performance when it's ready. And we can't wait to be a part of the Global Ode to Joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to see you, Tracy.
Oh, you too. It's great.
Okay. I'm glad we're connected now. Bye, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks for joining us.
Very much.
Well,
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Obrigado.